Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Leadership Now with me, Daniel Pontifrac. I'm pretty excited today because I have a friend in the house, but a friend that's doing such great things now, but has done great things for such a long time. Josh Blair, a quick bio, and then we're going to get right into your latest venture and called Impro.ai. So Josh is the CEO and co-founder of Impro.ai, a high-tech company that enables corporations to elevate their performance. I think that's a key word, Josh, is performance. We'll get into that. Through their AI-powered platform, Impro provides daily performance guidance to employees and organizational performance insights to executives. There's the key. Josh also serves as chairman at Strave, a global edtech, AI, and data solutions leader, and the vice chair at TELUS International, a global leader in providing digital customer experience solutions. Additionally, he's a partner at Esplanade Ventures, a venture capital firm that's focused on the health technology market. Prior to 2020, Josh served at TELUS in very diverse leadership capacities over a quarter of a century. From 2014 to 2019, he was group president overseeing the successful progression of TELUS International, TELUS Health, TELUS Business Solutions, TELUS Agriculture, TELUS Ventures. The list goes on. And before that, many different executive roles, including a time when he may have actually hired me. More on that later, maybe, Josh. Earlier in his career, Josh proved himself to also be a successful entrepreneur, leading a startup business that developed network management software until he orchestrated a sale of that company to VeriSign. He served in many different board and advisory capacities over his career, supporting organizations such as the Business Council of British Columbia and Canada's Health and Biosciences Economic Strategy Table. He is an entrepreneur like no other, and also arguably a good friend. But Josh, we're here to talk about Impro. So let's come back a second, dial it up, and sort of say, okay, well, what is this thing that you've cooked up now, coming on almost half a decade? It's rapidly grown since its inception. So maybe share the story behind sort of its founding and its vision, you and your co-founders, and what the heck is Impro.ai? Let's start there.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd say thank you for the very generous intro and absolute pleasure to be on your show, Dan. Incredibly successful program you have and a tribute to one of the many, many things that you've already accomplished in your career and yet will accomplish. But coming to Impro, kind of going back to your bio, to a degree, it's rooted in my 25 years at TELUS. And during my time at TELUS, I started out as an engineer, so that's my training, my background. Spent a third of my time as an engineering leader, so understood the technology side of things. Then where I had the good fortune to intersect with you and work so closely with you is the middle third of my career at TELUS, where I was our chief learning officer, then our chief HR officer. And then the final third of my time at TELUS, I became our chief commercial officer, effectively what we call group president, overseeing those five business divisions that you mentioned earlier. And there were two things at the intersection of those three aspects of my life, technology, human performance, and the business side of things that drove me a little bit crazy and led to the creation of Impro. And the first one was it's very difficult, as you would appreciate better than anyone, it's very difficult in the corporate learning world to actually impact performance. And obviously at TELUS, we did some great things to achieve that and became the highest winning organization in the world in terms of ATD Best Awards from the Association for Talent Development. And so we figured out really kind of some secret sauces to how to translate learning to performance. But I think if you take a step back from what we did at TELUS and holistically, if you got any chief learning officer in the room or chief HR officer in the room, and I think they would admit that most corporate learning is a wonderful employee experience. It's a good employee engagement tool. It's a good employee retention tool. But the translation from new knowledge being imparted or new practices being imparted to people performing better in the workplace is minimal in terms of how effective that is. And there's a lot of neuroscience research that says that this is actually an obvious truth because when we're adults, by the time we reach 25 plus or minus a few years, our brains get pretty hardwired in terms of our habits. And now remember, I'm not talking about imparting new knowledge in people. We're great at that as adults, but actually impacting their performance at work is where we wanted to impact things with Impro. So because we're creatures of habits, we learn all these new things or we learn all these new practices. We rate the learning session we were at a 10 out of 10. But we get back to the office and we got 1,000 emails and 25 meetings, and our boss is frustrated with us and we got some customer escalations. So we revert to our existing habits and our performance doesn't change. We don't elevate our performance as a result. So that was kind of challenge number one that we wanted to solve with Impro. Challenge number two I wanted to solve with Impro is when I was sitting around the executive table or the board tables I'm sitting at now in terms of Strive, TELUS International, you get amazing data at your fingertips when it comes to the financials of a large enterprise. You know how to go after more revenue. You know where to lower costs. You know how to optimize the bottom line, how to optimize your dividend, et cetera. Similarly, you have phenomenal data at your fingertips, typically around your customers. Where do they buy from you? How much do they buy from you? What's their omni-channel experience? If they buy two products, their retention goes up. If they buy three products from you, et cetera, et cetera. Where you have, I would say, inadequate data at your fingertips is around your workforce as a whole. So you might have twice a year engagement surveys where you get a general sense of people's commitment, experience with the organization. It's arguable how effective those surveys are. They're point in time surveys. There's some tools out there now which are pretty good also around real-time sentiment analysis, trying to get a feel for how is your workforce feeling at any point in time. But many users of those tools would say that the data you get is less actionable, more kind of vanilla in terms of the data you get back from some of those services. And so that was the second thing that we wanted to solve with Impro is how do we actually bring real, meaningful, actionable insights to an executive team or an executive sponsor around their workforce as a whole. Um, so lo and behold, after I left my day job at TELUS and wanted to get back into the entrepreneur seat, I met my two co-founders who were based in Israel at the time. And they had a company just before COVID that was a not-for-profit that was helping change the learning patterns and performance patterns of children such that any child could be a gifted learner. So this concept we have in our education system now that, 10% of kids are gifted learners and the 90%, just you got to do your best with them. But, there's that 10% that are gifted. They built a system built around pattern recognition because, that's how our brains tend to work and making it fun that helped prove, and they did a lot of work in Israel and the Czech Republic and proved this out with 10,000 kids that they touched, that pretty much any kid can be a gifted learner if you're willing to change the education paradigm, which is a whole nother discussion for another day. I got excited about this and offered to potentially partner with the two of them on that work because just I have two sons and they've had very different educational journeys. And I'm a big believer in our one size fits all educational system has to change. Their response was, you know what? We were rolling with this company called Stages Global until COVID hit. And when everything shut down, schools reverted to their existing programs, et cetera. So it's a little bit on ice at the moment. And the other challenge with not-for-profit is just the funding of it, et cetera. But we think a lot of the same concepts we've applied here could apply in the adult learning and performance world. And Josh solved the two challenges you just laid out that frustrated you at TELUS. And if eventually we build a great company, one of the purpose elements of our company could be to refund, regrow Stages Global and contribute a percentage of profits to help children all become gifted learners in various parts of the world. So that's the big vision is grow Impro enough that we can not only help adults perform better throughout the world, but also help all kids to become gifted learners through contributions to Stages Global. So how do we go about doing that? I guess would probably be the next area to cover, but that's the origin story.
Interesting. And so you clearly have a purpose-driven mindset that you always have. And so Impro, it continues because you're building a company to help two avenues, really. At the end of the day, it's the employees and the executives within the organization, but the ancillary and benevolence of you benefit will be, well, we can restart what we were trying to do pre-COVID for students. And I couldn't agree more with children, how we do need to re-inject a new way of thinking when it comes to the education system. I know we've talked offline about that before. Now, back to improv though today. Let's dig in a little bit into what it is because in the name it says Impro.ai. So one could think, oh, it's an AI company. Although arguably the AI is sort of like the benefit part for executives and organizations to get the insights that are so lacking today when it comes to the performance change of the team member. So what is Impro? It's a coaching system, it's an app, it's an AI. Tell us a bit about what the actual platform is.
Yeah, for sure. I would start by, I believe we're one of a select few companies creating a whole new vertical that I would call performance tech. So
Mm,
not ed tech, not learning tech, et cetera, et cetera. I like to call it performance tech. Um, I'll cover first how we help an individual employee to perform better, and then how we help an overall corporation to perform better.
sure.
And so typically we have an executive sponsor, and we're working with employees in their organization. That executive sponsor could be a CEO, COO, VP of sales, whatever. But typically our one-on-one work is with individuals at middle management, frontline management, and the frontline professional levels. And they work with one of our Impro strategists over the Impro app. And the term Impro strategist we have picked on purpose. It's actually an Impro performance strategist, or IPS. And think of it as kind of a coach on steroids. And the reason I say that is, in traditional coaching, we look to help people find the answers inside of themselves. And it's a beautiful method. But because we really wanted to impact performance, we've built a system where at times our strategists are coaching. At times they're offering business advice to help someone get to an answer quicker. At times they're helping someone just understand how to use a new tool like a chat GPT or something like that to do their job more effectively. So a wide range of how our strategists are helping an individual perform better. There's a human side and there's an AI side to how we help an individual perform better. So let's say, Dan, you were my Impro performance strategist and I was a frontline manager at company XYZ. The human side is we would meet like this over video initially, build some trust with one another, eyeball to eyeball. And in
Mhm.
fact, we would meet by video every 6 weeks to keep the human in the loop side of what we're doing.
Right.
In between those 6 weeks, you're going to take me through a 4-step process. And you might take me through this process 20 times in a year or 100 times in a year, depending on the complexity of topics we're working on. And again, this is daily. We're going back and forth over the app, largely text messages over the app. So kind of the concept of atomic habits, like tiny little changes will add up to bigger changes over time. Step one is you're going to see if I'm open-minded on the particular topic that we're working on, or if you can get me open-minded on the topic. Because at the end of the day, if I just think I'm God's gift to this topic, let's move on because I'm not going to change. I got to be open-minded before I'm going to change.
Right.
Once you get me open-minded on something, or I start open-minded on something, we're going to go step two, which is behavior. And we're going to try some new behaviors for me at work. And they're going to range. Some are going to work terribly for me. Some are going to work decently for me. Some are going to work great for me. You're going to seize in on the behavior that worked great for me on this topic we're working on. Maybe it's delegation, maybe it's better collaboration, maybe it's understanding project management better, whatever. But you're going to hone in on this behavior that worked great for me. And you're going to go to step three, which is habit. You're going to get me repeating that behavior until you truly believe, and I believe it has become a habit, and you no longer need to be an accountability partner on it because it's just a habit for me now. But you're not going to stop there. You're going to go to step four. And step four is, now that you have this new performance habit, Josh, we're going to go to step four, which is dollars. So
Mm,
work on a project that's either going to add revenue to your company, lower cost in your company, avoid a cost increase in your company, improve customer service that we can tie back to some sort of financial outcome for your company, to truly prove that I am performing at a new level that isn't just subjective in the sense of, hey, I feel like I'm doing better, or my manager feels like I'm doing better. No, I can do something that delivers bottom line improvements for the company. And for Impro, it has a nice added benefit. And for the companies that use us, of having an ROI on the work we do with them. So that's the human side of how we're helping individuals. Mindset, behavior, habit, dollars, doing that process over and over again through these daily interventions. And we ask people to spend 5 minutes a day on their Impro work. It's very small ask of them, and they see big change through it. The AI side of how we help the individual is Again, in the situation where you're my Impro strategist, I'm a frontline manager at company XYZ. Our AI engine is monitoring all of our interactions, assuming I've given you permission to do that, over the app, even taking the transcripts from our video discussions, pumping them in, and it's looking for patterns. It's just doing
Yeah.
pattern recognition. And then it takes all of our models and we map those patterns typically to three broad categories. I'm oversimplifying, but just to make the point, it'll come back to you and it'll say, Dan, here are Josh's patterns. These ones represent weaknesses that are holding him back. These ones represent strengths that are worth leveraging. These ones represent biases. And a bias can be the worst possible thing you can imagine to something as simple as, hey, Josh just got a promotion to his frontline manager job. He's not comfortable with delegation, so he's double checking all the work of his team, and their productivity is in the tank as a result because he's become a bottleneck and is micromanaging the team. You can then take that data and then you can further elevate my performance because we can double down on my strengths, we can remediate my weaknesses, and we can break through the biases that are holding me back. And in some cases, biases are actually can be good things, and we can leverage those biases for greater good, if you will. So that's the AI side of how we help the individual. How does that all translate, though, to helping an executive do their job better? Because
Mhm.
that's the second aspect of what we want to do. So the same way we see patterns in an individual's behavior, now imagine we're working with 100, 1,000 people at an organization, or even as small numbers like 25 people at an organization. We will also see patterns across our platform of the behaviors of all of those individuals. And then we then again map those to our organizational behavioral models. And we go back to an executive team and say, hey, here are the patterns we're seeing that are cross-organizational in nature. And they represent strengths of your organization. They represent weaknesses in your organization. They also represent opportunities and threats to your organization. So the traditional SWOT analysis. Obviously, we come with a lot more than that, our recommendations, what to do about it, et cetera, et cetera. But we've had executives go, holy smokes, I knew 70% of this, but 30% of this is new and it's going to help me drive breakthrough performance in the organization. And typically, when we review that data with an executive, there'll be three sets of action items that come out of the meeting. The first one will be ones the executive themselves takes. Holy smokes, based on this new data, I'm going to lead differently. I'm going to focus here differently, whatever it is, so that they're driving organizational performance at a new level. Next two are for Impro. One of those two will be, hey, Impro, in your daily performance guidance sessions with the people you're working with, please focus on this stuff over the next 6 weeks, because typically we meet twice a quarter with the executive sponsors. And then the third one is typically around data. So they might say, hey, Impro, you brought me some good data that, workload is an issue in my organization, but I need the next layer of the onion on that data before I take action. Is that because I've got inefficient processes that are causing a lot of rework? Is that because I've got leadership levels that are ineffectively prioritizing? Or is it just I truly have too much work for the number of people I have and I need to do more hiring? That might be, preference number three, given it's going to inflate our costs, but bring me the data so that I can make the right decision. And so through that, we're able to help organizations perform better at the organizational level through our work with the executive team and at the individual level through the work we do at middle management and below. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. It's yielding some pretty crazy, cool results. And yeah, it's a lot of fun work.
Well, that's a really good segue, Josh, because I wanted to see, without naming perhaps the organization, because I know you're working with several, but it seems like the platform is a win-win. So the team member has a mindset, a behavior, a habit change that obviously will help them both from a personal and professional perspective, arguably, if the coach is working with them on something that does indeed help them performance-wise, again, work or life. But then on the organizational side, the executives, the leader, whomever, they're obviously on that dollar component after mindset, behavior, habit, are feeling, oh, you know what? There's something here that has increased. If that's revenue, if that's a decrease of cost, there's some return on the actual performance change, not just investment, but performance. So maybe take us through sort of a real world, if you want to leave out the company name, obviously cool example where that win-win has actually happened. And then we can see this sort of, yeah, in flight.
Yeah, I'll give you three examples, and these three companies have all given me permission to use their names, so I
Oh,
will in this case, and we're building case studies on these exact things as we speak. I'll start with TELUS, my alma mater. We are working with several sales organizations in TELUS, but the first one we started with, after our first year of working with them, they had invested $75,000 on their work with Impro. They, through the dollars, the executive insights, etc., um, signed off on 1.5 million of net new benefit in terms of new revenue coming in as a result of their work with us.
whoa.
And so that was a 20 times ROI, which is, you know, pretty wonderful number. I mean, often we sell ourselves on two times, three times ROI. So to be able to prove they can deliver things like 20 times ROI is very significant. But that's a revenue example. I'll give an operations example. So Dye and Durham, huge legal tech, finance tech organization on a global basis. They brought us in just with an initial pilot project, initially to help them in their operations area. They needed to save some cost in one of their operations areas. So they brought us in, spent it was like under 5K with us over a 3 month project with us, and got a 17 times ROI. I think they saved 65K on what they spent with us. And again, now looking to deploy us much broader as a result once you start seeing a 17 times ROI.
Yeah.
And then I'll give you a third and final example, just because those two are large enterprises. More an SMB example, we were working with an organization called Marketech, and they had kind of plateaued at a certain revenue level over certain years and felt something was missing in their business strategy. So they really needed the executive insight side of what we did to help them break through that next level. Over the course of a couple of years of working with them, we did identify some strategic enablers to them going to the next level, which was largely that they were running a core business and they were trying to run offshoot businesses all through the same engine.
Yeah.
So we helped them separate those things out, kind of the ambidextrous organization, if you remember that line of thinking. Anyway, they attributed it to them breaking through at a revenue level of 1 million in new revenue that they weren't getting before. And that was a 50 times ROI in that case on their work with us. So typically, the way we go in is there's specific performance goals that we're trying to help an organization achieve, either increase revenue, lower cost, avoid cost inflation, whatever it is. And then we're working with people, to your point, on their personal and professional development, but also with an angle of, once we get you performing at a higher level, we're going to focus on this bigger challenge that the organization has laid out for us. It could be an opportunity, can be a shortcoming, but whatever the organization needs. So, yeah, as a result, typically our sponsor is not the CHRO, but is a CEO or an executive leading a line of business in an organization.
And what dawned on me was when you think about those daily performance guidance, those conversations, the text exchanges, et cetera, everything that's within that, the team member, what you've created, I should say, let me take a step back. Impro is sort of like the anti-coaching platform. And why I say that is because, and I'm such a proponent of coaching done for organizations or teams, not just on an individual basis. Yes, there's a time and place for individual coaching, but that's not what this is. Impro seems to be, and help me out here and help the audience understand, a way for an organization or a team or that leader to say, you know what? We are going to work on you and you and you and you so that it's almost like everyone's in the camp of being coached. And so when you have team-based coaching happening, then what you can do as a leader is to say, all right, well, now it's not individuals, it's actually team who are being individually coached. And then what you get is the momentum. You get that gigantic pull of the team then increasing their mindset, their habits, and their behaviors, so that when the executive who's in charge of 10, 12, 50, 1,000 people, oh, wow, look at that amoeba move as opposed to the individual move. And the only analogy I'll say to this, Josh, is that I know some people may not know this, but you and I had cooked up this idea back in our Telus days that instead of sending individuals to an MBA, why not create an MBA for the organization and see what might happen when 20 or 24 people get together across a finish line? What would that do to serve the organization? To me, Impro is very analogous to that concept as opposed to sending individuals out to an MBA at Queens, at NYU, at wherever, Stanford. It's like, no, let's do this together. So tell me a bit about how this, not the metaphor, but just how Impro is based on kind of the team aspect, although individuals, to work at the organizational improvement level.
Yeah, great question. And it's a perfect analogy, actually. Because typically when we start with an organization, we start with what are the organizational goals? What performance change are you trying to achieve? What new language, what new habits are you looking to establish? And then we start working with everyone on those goals.
Mm,
Each individual will have individual elements they want to improve too. But the goal is to improve those individual elements of capability, habit, performance, all towards that greater goal that you're working on together. So when you think about that collective TELUS MBA program that you so incredibly built, um, the 30 students in that classroom are all working on TELUS projects at the end of the day that are helping TELUS become more innovative, perform better as an organization, et cetera. Same thing here. It's the exact same concept. We have some core goals that have been laid out by the executive sponsor. We're looking to help all ships rise with a rising tide, if you will. Start to speak a new language together, a more creative way. One of our philosophies that we root everything we do on, we call PAC, which is productivity, adaptability, creativity. And so we're trying to help all boats rise by helping everyone become more productive, more adaptable, more creative towards these bigger goals that the organization has set out. And you're going to be improving some things that are unique to you personally along the way too. Um, and the final thing I'll say on that is we keep our whole platform separate from corporate platforms. So a lot of people will say to me, "Oh, do you integrate with Slack? Do you integrate with Teams? Blah 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 blah, etc." Not trying to plug any particular program here. And our actual answer is no, and we believe that you'll support that answer after 2 or 3 months of working with us. They always do support it because this even surprised me what I'm about to say. I had a feeling for it, but the level of it surprised even me. The level of personal depth someone gets into with their Impro strategist is far higher, surprisingly to some degree, than if they were working with a face-to-face executive coach,
mm.
once a week or once every 2 weeks. And the reason for that is because they're having a daily conversation. I mean, think about anyone you text message with on a daily basis in your life, you typically have a level of depth in that relationship. And so people can get into things with us that they just can't get into typically with others, whether that's confidence issues they want to work through or things that are in their personal life that are holding them back in their professional life, or relationship issues they're having in the workplace, et cetera, et cetera. And so work on some of those personal elements at the same time that we're working towards moving that greater amoeba, as you said, in a positive direction.
Sounds a lot like work-life bloom, my friend, but I digress. Two final questions, and then we'll find out where we can find out more about Impro.ai. The purpose of Impro, I want to come back to, or I guess introduce it, and then ask you about the key words in there. So for listeners, the purpose of Impro is to empower employees at every level of the organization to build powerful new habits designed to equip them with all the tools they need to learn, grow, and unlock their full potential. And the words that I wanted to call out for you, just to get your comment, is habits, learn, grow, and potential. So When you're coming up with a statement like that, tell me a bit about those words or that statement in general and why that's so important to have sort of a North Star as to what Impro purports to do for both the employee and obviously the organization.
Yeah, great question. The reason for that language and that specific language is it actually the root word of all that language was performance. And we really wanted to come out and make it clear our whole goal is to help people perform better. It's going to be good for them, but it's good for the organization, and the organization is the one paying for our service at the end of the day. And so then we took a step back and said, well, how do we define a high performer? What do we believe is going to lead to high performance? And it is someone who's continuously learning, continuously growing, and truly realizing their full potential. Um, and I don't care who you are or how many times you've been around the block or how accomplished you are, we can all get better. And I think that most of us, if not all of us, want to get better. And that, that was one of the things I think you and I saw in organizations is often there's this view that, after you've helped someone through their first X years, they've kind of maxed out and you're going to get what you get out of them, but that's it. Whereas I believe if you have the mindset of we're going to continue to invest in everyone, and they've got to put in the effort, but as long
Mhm.
as they're willing to put in the effort too, we're going to help everyone to learn, to grow, to optimize their potential and the delivery of their potential, which is going to lead to them performing better. And if everyone in the organization starts to perform better, the whole organization is going to start performing better as a result of those individual performances adding up. But then later on the insights that we can bring to the CEO or the COO that she or he can leverage to do their job better too. And our goal is kind of performance squared, if you will. So performance at the individual level, performance at the organizational level, and just unlocking some exciting stuff in an interesting time, right? Like another part of, if you get any of our three founders in a private conversation that we'll talk about, is we do all believe that AI is going to materially disrupt the professional world and eliminate many jobs, or eliminate aspects of many jobs. And we just think individuals are going to have to be able to retool themselves in a way they've never had to before. And we also believe that a lot of the existing systemic approaches to helping adults retool themselves aren't going to be able to step up to that level. And so we hope we're one of the solutions that does help people through this wave of change that's coming over the next many years and many decades. So um, yeah, a long answer, but performance is at our root, and that's what led to outlining what we want to achieve with individuals per the words that you shared and at the organizational level.
Impro.ai, permitting all boats to rise. Josh, I have been blessed, privileged under the tutelage and learnings of you and your leadership style for many, many years. And I would be remiss if I wasn't in this chance to chat with you today, asking you perhaps of sort of your Josh Blair leadership philosophy. You've honed and crafted it. The spoiler alert for listeners and viewers is that I think, Josh, you come at leadership as a captain of empathy, but also knowing that execution has to occur. It's like the double E's, right? So it's empathy and execution, and one doesn't trump the other. You've found a way in which to uniquely integrate an empathic leadership style, knowing you still have to execute, and that one, as I say, doesn't come at the consequence of the other. So I almost led you somewhere down a path that perhaps you didn't want to go. But what is the Josh Blair leadership philosophy for those that are hanging around here and listening in?
Well, I love how you combine the concepts of empathy and execution. It's probably more articulate than I would present it, to be honest. But I think you're right that there is that balance. To me, I kind of live by three mantras when it comes to leadership. And literally they're in this order. And for me, number one is I believe you have to constantly build and deploy courage. within yourself, within your teams. And I think leadership requires a lot of courage. Courage means you're going to make mistakes along the way. You got to learn from those mistakes, though. Um, but I don't think you're going to outperform the next organization if you don't deploy a lot of courage, do some new things, innovate on behalf of your customers, on behalf of your team, et cetera. And so I think you really have to find ways to build courage within yourself, within your team, and deploy that courage. And so building, deploying courage is number one for me. Number two for me, I call it understanding the true power of and leveraging the true power of diversity. Um, and this nails the empathy point that you were making. Um, and so to me, the true power of diversity is having people from different backgrounds, people who think differently, and people who will bring their best thinking to what you're trying to solve. And I often say it as my goal is to surround myself with people who have far different gifts than I do that are far stronger than my particular skills in that space. You're a classic example of someone who's got gifts that I could never achieve within your realm. Um, and some leaders will feel threatened by that. I'm the opposite. Like I know I've got many weak spots, so surround myself with the true power of diversity with people of different backgrounds, different creeds, different thinking that will help us elevate our thinking, our performance, our execution. And they've got to have the right empathetic environment to feel safe to make those contributions, obviously. So that's number two for me is really um, understanding and then leveraging and the true power of diversity. And then number three for me, maybe a bit less popular in today's age, but it's kind of goes to part of what you were talking about in work-life bloom. Um, and I think if you work and learn hard and always push yourself to work and learn hard, um, it's really going to help you in your leadership journey. If you're willing to put in the extra sweat, whether that's learning new things, um, helping the organization perform better, et cetera. I can't, obviously balance is still important in life, but I like how you talk about how work-life balance is a myth in work-life bloom, and it's more about work-life integration. And I think those of us who, are willing to put in a lot of work into making work-life integration work as well as possible for ourselves, never stop learning, continuously push ourselves to achieve new levels of performance, kind of going back to the Impro mantra. Those to me are the three ingredients for success. And whether I'm interviewing someone or leading a large organization, I'm looking at, hey, how can we build and deploy more courage? How can we build and leverage even more diversity and the true power of diversity? And are we pushing ourselves to work hard and learn hard as individuals and as an organization? So that's kind of what I've boiled it down to at this point in time, at least.
I love it. I love those three. And on the latter, I probably should tip my hat because it was you whom introduced me probably 15 years ago to a concept called life work integration. And you actually reversed work and life around and said, actually, let's think about life first and work and the integration of that into life. So I have you to thank, Josh, for me thinking about things like work, life, and blooming.
Well,
Um,
maybe a little.
This was so much fun and insightful. I'm so proud of what's happening at Impro, and the platform itself, just as the recovering sort of learning leadership performance guy. Man, did I wish we had this back in the day at TELUS. Where can we find more about Impro.ai?
Yeah, so our website's the same. Impro, just go to impro.ai, IMPRO. It's short for both improvement and improvisation because we try to help people, again, with productivity, adaptability, and creativity. So impro.ai, or you can reach me if you want a quick discussion or even an executive overview sent to you. You can just get me at josh.blair@impro.ai.
Amazing, JB. Truly one of Canada's finest creations when it comes to the integration of life and work, but also I would argue technology and empathy, technology and performance, technology and people. And I can't wait to see what more is going to come from you, but really excited where Impro is and where it's going. I think it's spot on, as I say, what a lot of executives and line leaders should be thinking about. Even if you are in HR, CHR, or CLO, it's your time to play offense with something like Impro. Just go get it. That's what I would say. Everyone, again, my thanks to Josh. Thanks for listening or watching to another episode of Leadership Now. Today in the house, my good pal Josh Blair, co-founder and CEO of Impro.ai. More episodes in the vault, but do check out Josh and the company at Impro.ai. Thanks again, Josh.
Thank you, Dan. It was great. Really appreciate it.